You have reached Jim Marshall. Please leave a message after the beep, and someone will get back to you shortly. Thank you.
I think when I first started working for Jim, he was really trying to kill himself. He was struggling with a cocaine habit that started in the late 60s, early 70s, which was really his downfall. He was starting to become very isolated and reflective because he recognized that he could hurt people. He literally locked himself in his apartment. So the only person he could hurt is himself.
It's thanks to him that we have memories we have of certain icons of the rock and roll business. He shot them all: Coltrane, Cash, Dylan, Monk, Hendrix. He leaves them to all of us. Jim Marshall was 74.
I'm glad he died the way he did, because he always said to me, you probably are going to be the person when I die that finds me. And he goes, and I don't want that to be the last memory that you have of me. And he fulfilled that wish. He was in New York. He died in his sleep at the W Hotel. He was reading a book, and the book was on his chest. The police put crime scene around the W Hotel, and everybody's like, oh my God, what happened? There was some murder. So Jim died the way he wanted to, and he died like a fucking rock star.
Looking great. Come on, for an old man. For an old man? No. You got the spirit of a 12-year-old. You know that.
These are the images of Jim Marshall, a photographer who's been behind the front lines of just about every significant musical revolution during the last 20 years, and almost every significant musical trend since. In the early 60s, Marshall was in New York when Bob Dylan went electric and rock came of age. He later moved back to San Francisco and documented the psychedelic era, and has strong feelings about people who take their pictures less than seriously.
I think a lot of photographers abuse the camera and abuse what they do. I think that an artist lets you into their life on a personal level. I'm not talking about some jive concert shots. I'm talking about personal, real photographs of people. I feel that these people have let you into their life as a trust, and I feel to violate that trust is criminal.
You know, I'm not gonna just sit here and gush about Jim Marshall. The motherfucker could take a good picture. I mean, shit, where do you start? Do you start with Jimi Hendrix? Do you start with Janis Joplin? Do you start with, oh, here's Miles? Oh, no, let's talk about Coltrane. When you look at the body of work, hoo-wee, you know, come on now. And it was a commitment. It was a commitment to the work. The stuff that Jim got, you'll never see that again. I don't care what anybody says. You won't even see reasonable facsimiles, all right? Let's talk about hate. You had Jim there right in the middle of that, right in the middle of the whole Haight-Ashbury Summer of Love.
Haight-Ashbury was a very wonderful neighborhood. It was a melting pot. Nobody saw color or race or any of it. It was all just, everybody was everybody. And I grew up on Haight Street. I went to the Haight Theater. That was our place.
The first time I saw Jim Marshall was in the Haight-Ashbury. Our neighborhood bands, who we didn't know would ever be famous, were the Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, Quicksilver Messenger Service, the Charlatans, among others. And Jim was part of the core, what I call family, in the Haight-Ashbury.
So he's there, scooting around town from one hippie scene to another. He's one of the few professional photographers that's associated with this movement. There were other people shooting, but they weren't necessarily the professional quality that Marshall was. And so he walks in to this band of upstarts called the Grateful Dead, and he is elevated. They are the amateurs seeking status.
Jim Marshall was one of the first guys that showed up with a camera and wanted to take pictures of us. Before that, I mean, who cared? Just a bunch of folkies hanging out. Jim was there when stuff was going on that it was unimaginable before then and is unimaginable today.
He could roll out of bed and take his camera and start pointing it and come up with gold. You had, Big Brother and the holding company. You had Jefferson Airplane. Joan Baez was down the street. Hendrix would show up. Everybody was right there. I mean, there was so much stuff going on, it wasn't even funny.
In a way, he became a part of our odd little family. And it was one of these things that once that he'd appeared, it was like he'd always been there. I think that brief moment in time when there really was that freedom to pretty much say and do and be whatever you wanted to be.
Mr. Guitar, I want so much to have a good time, yeah. To try to forget that girl will never be mine, never be mine.
When I first met Jim Marshall, it was quite an experience. My childhood friend was having her 30th birthday party and invited me to it. So I went, and all of a sudden there was this little man with a Leica around his neck, shuffling around. He looked at me and he's like, ooh, and he boom, 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 came over, and he goes, hi, I'm Jim Marshall. I said, hi, I'm Amelia Davis. He goes, what do you do? And I said, I'm a photographer. I said, what do you do? I had no idea who Jim Marshall was, that he just wasn't in my wheelhouse. And then he said, wait a minute, are you gay? And I looked at him and I said, yes, I am. And he goes, I'm always attracted to gay women or married women. And I looked at him and I said, that's your problem, not mine. And he laughed and he said, I think we're gonna be really good friends. The next 13 years of my life, it was filled with Jim Marshall.
Okay, well, the easiest thing to do is to talk about when Jim and I met. And I was a journalism student at SF State, and when I got into a magazine writing class, they would do these typical assignments, and one was, where are they now? So one day, a magazine guy came in, and I said, man, I gotta have a topic in an hour for my magazine writing class, and I need somebody who used to be famous, but they don't have to be that famous, but it'd be good if they were famous. And this guy looks at me and he goes, Jim Marshall. I was like, who the fuck's Jim Marshall, right? And he says, oh, he's this asshole, but he's really famous, and he's done like hundreds of album covers, and he just got released out of prison. The first moment I met him at a bar downtown, which I don't think is there anymore, he had a box of what turned out to be proof sheets in his hand. And this turns out to be 5 weeks after he's been released from work furlough. This is March 1984. I go in and I'm about 15 or 20 minutes late. Meanwhile, Jim has been there probably for 3 hours, sitting at the bar drinking green margaritas because it's St. Patrick's Day. And so I show up and I look down and I see this little malevolent gnome who looks really pissed off. So I walk up to him and I'm like, hi, I'm Michelle. You probably figured that out already, right? And he just kind of looked at me, right? And I looked at him. And he said, wow, you're late, and all this. So anyway, we went and sat, and he had this box. I opened it up, and there were about this high a stack of proof sheets. And I looked down and I said, well, what do you mean? It's a bunch of proof sheets. And he goes, well, no, you look at each one of these as a killer shot. This is gonna be my comeback. I said, okay. And he goes, I'm gonna call it Jim Marshall Shoots People.
What are you doing? Leave the fucking lights alone. When I was a kid, I won a track meet, and I had a baby brownie, but the guy that took pictures for the school was using a Leica. So at 9 or 10 years old, maybe, end of the World War II, I started cutting pictures of cameras out of magazines and pasting them in a scrapbook and writing the price in pencil. That's maybe what started it. My fascination with the camera. I've always liked cars, guns, and cameras. Cars and guns have got me in trouble. Cameras haven't.
I was about a year and a half old, and I, came out here, obviously with my mother and father. Grew up here, went to school here, and lived here all my life.
I think at times Jimmy gave me the impression that he didn't have a lot of self-confidence or self-esteem or whatever, that he felt the son of immigrant parents. He was so close to his mom, and you could tell it was a mother-son relationship. She reminded me of Italian mothers in many ways. He would bristle when Margie would tell him to behave or not do something or eat more or whatever it was, but it was dear, and you could tell he really loved his mom.
I only met his mother a couple times, and this is just me personally. I felt he loved her, but I felt there was real tension. And I thought part of that was, Jim was really raised by his mother and his aunts, and his father wasn't around. I think, like all of us, we're all shaped and formed by the things that happened to us in our real early years. And you know what? He had a tough time. He was basically like an immigrant kid in white America. If Jim was nothing else, he was a fucking survivor.
And I went in the Air Force when I was 18 and a half, for a year and a half. And then I wangled my way out of the Air Force because I didn't feel like being a clerk typist. And then I came back to San Francisco, and then from, Jesus Christ, that was in 1956. I was very involved in automobiles and sports car racing and drag racing and stuff.
Well, he used to go to Fremont for the drags, and he was a big car guy. I mean, talk about Americana. That was Jim.
Marshall started out shooting stuff in North Beach at the height of the beatnik era. And San Francisco, Grand Avenue, that was ground zero for that whole thing. And that's where Jack Kerouac ended up after On the Road. So whatever the zeitgeist of the 60s was, Marshall was in on it right from the very start.
I've done, maybe 50,000, 100,000 rolls of film. On roll number 40, Dinah Washington. And on roll 567 to 579, John Coltrane from 1960. I'd met him at the Jazz Workshop, and we're backstage, and he asked me, how do you get to Berkeley? And I go, why? He goes, well, I've got to go to Ralph Gleason's house for an interview. Ralph was the jazz critic for the Chronicle. So I said, I'll drive you. And I shot pictures at the interview, and they're beautiful.
I don't know what it is. He saw Coltrane. He captured the serenity of the guy and the depth and the intensity all at the same time. What time of day is that one out in the backyard taking? Is that like sunset or something like that? The light and the colors are just like out of a Renaissance painting or like a Turner or something.
His love for the blues, his love for jazz, He photographed a lot of particularly black artists who weren't necessarily getting a lot of attention. And he always had a strong defense for the underdog. He almost would look for an underdog to defend.
He always was the ultimate outsider, and he fought and scrapped and used that as a motivating tool.
You know, one of the reasons that John Coltrane exists, aside from his musical genius, is the zeitgeist. I mean, the time that he was reacting to, those songs like Alabama, responding to social things, and Marshall's part of that time. He's so important to kind of an era where a lot was changing socially, artistically, and Marshall's photographs of these men away from their instruments, not on stage, kind of reveals that more than anything else for me.
Between Jim Marshall and Ralph Gleason, of course, being the jazz critic for the San Francisco Chronicle, and later co-founding the Monterey Jazz Festival. I mean, that was the big deal. You know, you got to go to the Monterey Jazz Festival. And who had documented the Monterey Jazz Festival? Fucking Jim Marshall. Jazz festivals were one of the first places where you really had integration. It was nice and loose, you know, and people would dance and people would associate and people would get together and have a drink.
And remember, this is like just after segregation, right? And so these people were together with the community in a way that doesn't exist anymore. Musicians operate a lot on feeling. And so it's clear to me that someone like Marshall, who had access to Miles Davis, who had access to John Coltrane, they had to respect him to let them that close. Coltrane was known as a very gentle man, but Miles certainly didn't let people close to him that he didn't respect. They must have thought of him as an artist on their level in some ways.
I think the first time I met Miles in '59, I asked him why he had a green trumpet. I forget what he said, but he goes, I didn't ask you why you have a black camera. It scared the shit out of me. So in the next 6 years, I do 2 album covers on him, live stuff. Then the first time he played for Bill Graham at Winterland, I made a print for Miles of Coltrane. I'd be backstage, just media all over the place. I go, hey, Miles. He goes, I go, it's for you. He goes, what is it? He goes, it's for you. I'm busy, man. What is it? I start to walk away. He opens it. Everybody's going, Miles this, Miles that, da-da-da. He goes, everybody shut up. Hey, Jim, come back here. He goes, you knew John like this? John trusted you like this? I go, yeah. Why do you ever take pictures of me like that? I go, why don't you let me?
It's the diary of a life. This was the life. It was something that he thought that he must have been able to do better than the next person, or something that fulfilled a desire that had nothing to do with music, that had to do with living. Okay, life is short. And basically, I want to fill my life with as much poetry as I can. And the camera is a kind of memoir. It is a diaristic tool. And that's what I think when you look at a whole, the collection of images, it is a diary of a life in music. And what a beautiful thing.
In 1962, I did a lot of stuff on Dick Gregory, and I was going to New York. And I drove Dick Gregory's car with a bunch of money and stuff to take to Chicago for him. And I got as far as Chicago, and then took a bus on into New York City. Got there in June of '62, and lived there for 2.5 years.
I think the 60s, there was a sense of a movement, and music was part of that movement. And when I look at Jim's work, I see a documentary photographer. And it's really hard if you're a documentary photographer to get these great compositions. As they say, you have to have an eye for it. And he definitely had. He was able to create in really weird circumstances a beautiful picture.
Because it's not just music. He was shooting Woody Allen for the cover of Look magazine. He was shooting Carol Channing, a lot of theater.
Take a look. And those proof sheets tell the story. I mean, you see the Dylan walking down the street with Dave Van Ronk and his wife, and then, you know, they're just hanging out on the sidewalk. It's just 6th Avenue on some, like, Saturday or Sunday morning. There's not much traffic. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's this tire picture. Just out of nowhere.
I mean, the Dylan one is pretty close to perfection to me. It says so much, that picture. It makes you long for a different era. And what I learned from all these pioneers of photography, that no matter how good you are, if you don't have the access, you don't have the picture.
I don't know. I prefer just to hang out and shoot as a photojournalist. I want total access. I don't want someone telling me I can't go here or there. If they want me there, then they should respect my judgment and taste and integrity, if you want to use that word. And let's let me take the fucking picture. And let me capture what I see.
Jim had an eye for the moment. For Bob Dylan to have opened himself up that much to a photographer was very interesting, and at times he became invisible. I know when people are taking pictures of me, you always want to put your best side forward, you always want to look like James Dean and look cool and stuff, but people trusted Jim. And I think that was one of his main secrets. Once he had the trust of an artist, the artist trusted him to not screw up.
You know, he could be frantic, but through all of that, people gravitated toward him and they would allow him to come into their space. You can't teach that. You cannot teach that. I don't care how many cameras you have.
So a photographer being present, it's the classic thing that the documentarian changes the subject, and often for the worse. When it is working well, the documentarian allows something that is always there to emerge again, and a little bit of introspection on the photographer's part, the recorder's part, the documentarian's part, and a little bit of introspection on the performer's part allows another kind of composition to take place.
The way Jim truly expressed himself was through his photographs. And when you look at his photographs, you can see what he was feeling, what he was trying to get across, and the history that he was documenting.
As out there as I am, when I'm photographing, I just kind of become a fly on the wall and just want to document it.
Out of habit, he would always, whenever he left the house to go somewhere, pick up his Leica and put it on his shoulder. It was an extension of him. But he also, I think, had a curious eye. And that's what really put Jim apart from other photographers, because he was always looking, always wanting to document. No matter how insignificant you or I thought it was significant for Jim.
Every street corner is a circus. And when I teach and my students arrive on the first day and I have to pick who's going to be in the class and who is not going to be in the class, the kids who don't show up with their camera on day one, they're out. You're either that kind of person or you're not. You got to be open to it. Being ready to have your life changed every day.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. There has been a shooting in the motorcade in the downtown area.
The President of the United States is dead.
Now, do you know the shots that I did the day JFK was killed? Yeah. Right at this corner, right here.
When I met Jim and started working for him, my mother had just died and I had just been diagnosed with MS. For me, it was a difficult part of my life. I had this void, and then I, boom, met Jim. So he filled that void in a way. He was this very charismatic person, intelligent, witty. He also needed somebody in his life that cared and that would be with him. So I think it was beneficial for both of us.
Actually, there's a cute one of you and me, Jim. Did you see this one?
Yeah.
Right there.
Oh, that look awful. And art doesn't look good in the pictures.
Oh, it doesn't.
Well, I'll do that one.
He was such an intense person. I mean, he could be the biggest asshole, and then the next minute he could be the sweetest guy in the world.
I want to know how in one body can be such incredible range. I mean, you are such a sensitive photographer and have such a way with getting these things out of people. And you have so many dangerous ideas in there.
What dangerous ideas? For instance?
That's my opinion.
Well, let's
okay?
talk about them. What dangerous
I-
ideas?
Well, you're very casual and cavalier about guns and blowing people away.
They're a tool.
Threatening people.
Hey, I don't threaten anybody, man, unless they fuck with me first. What?
How can this...
It's a paradox.
It is a paradox.
It is a great paradox that I would
makes
probably have to spend every penny I make with a head shrinker to find out, and I don't believe in head shrinkers. That's why I'm fucked up. I don't know how to talk
You can
about
be
it.
so sensitive and so brutal all the same.
My first wife said I'm not sensitive, I'm just technically good.
I mean, there was a softness and a compassion about him and how he treated his friends, but you did not want to be on the wrong side of Jim Marshall. And I don't know, was he a Syrian Jew? He was a Catholic, but he was Syrian. People kept thinking he was a Jew because, he did have a shanaz, bless his soul, so he was a Catholic. Well, that explains a lot.
Everybody who knew Jim Marshall has Jim Marshall stories. They came with every encounter. The pose of this hard-ass, spiteful guy was simply that, a pose. And we know this by looking at his photographs. You can't see into people's hearts and souls through a camera lens unless you're an open connection to that. Somebody who's that open to these connections in life has to really guard himself.
Oh yeah, it's right here. It's right here in this bag. So apparently I have even the edited version. It was called Jim Marshall's Last Shot. And my journalism professor said, great stuff. Rough passages, though. Oh yeah? At 5'6", Marshall is a small man with a large talent and an even bigger insecurity. 200 years ago, he would have been jousting at windmills. 100, gunfighting in the dusty streets. Now he just shoots pictures, for the most part.
What kind of people are there? I have no place to stay. I'm thinking about the suffering. Love has flown away. My tears have come and gone. Oh my Lord, I have to roam. I have no home.
Jim Marshall's very well known for taking the last pictures of the Beatles playing live. And the Beatles knew it was going to be the last show. And they asked him to take pictures, explicitly.
August 29th, 66. The Beatles at Candlesticks at Platinum Print. I was the only guy allowed backstage. And they didn't want to play. They were too burned out. They're coming onto the stage from the dressing room. And I was on the field with them. The sound was pretty primitive, just the amplifiers on the stage. The lights were just the stadium lights. That day, August 29, 66, was right out of Hard Day's Night. It was that crazy.
The Beatles, they did what the Redcoats couldn't do in the American Revolution. They conquered the colonies.
I think they were at that stage in their lives anyway where they just completely had enough. So the Candlestick Park concert, which was not a success, fans were miles away from the stage, terrible acoustics, quite a high wind, not particularly pleasant weather. They were just glad to get the whole thing over with, really. I should think they were exhausted and pretty fed up, to be honest.
I really believe this in the deepest part of my heart, that no one knew that would be the last show they ever did. But August 29, 66 was their last public show.
I'd left London to come to Los Angeles to spend some time with Joni. I got to the house, there were other voices there, and I went, But it was David and Stephen. And after dinner, we smoked a big one. David said to Stephen, hey, play Willie, that song that we were working on. It was a song called You Don't Have to Cry. And the third time that we sang it, we had to stop in the middle of the song and start laughing. It sounded so insanely beautiful. And whatever sound Crosby, Stills and Nash had was born immediately in a half a song. As soon as I heard that sound, I knew I'd have to go back to England and leave the Hollies and leave my family and my friends and my equipment and my money and go to America and follow that sound.
In San Francisco, at the height of the Fillmore era, this was the center of the pop music universe. And nobody from London could get their wings until they played the Fillmore. Groups like Cream, Jimi Hendrix, Traffic, Pink Floyd, Procol Harum, all came to San Francisco to play the Fillmore. Cream was the height of their entire career. Marshall took all these photos. The Who first showed up in San Francisco in June 1967. There's photos of Roger Daltrey that his mother probably couldn't even recognize him in.
We were not only attracted to the music, but also, of course, to the clothes and the culture. Jimi Hendrix came back to us from the UK, transformed. The Stones providing a sort of a more raw counterpoint to the Beatles. John Mayall and Keith Richards and Eric Clapton and Steve Winwood all gave us back the blues.
It was a very fabulous, sunshine-filled, band-filled, ladies-filled moment. I went to Los Angeles and I swore I would never go back and live in England, and I never did.
You ever been to 11?
No.
God. I think it's gonna be like Easter and Christmas and New Year's and your birthday all together, you know, hearing all the different bands, you know. Just, like, I've heard a lot of them, but all at the same time, it's just gonna be too much.
I mean, once again, there he is at a seminal moment in rock and roll history. But rock and roll music had never actually been dignified yet with its own festival. And the Monterey Festival, it was magical because they had all these great international stars there, from Ravi Shankar to The Who to Hendrix.
Well, Jimmy started in England. You know, he's from here, but he started in England with the trio. And Monterey was his first gig in the United States as Jimi Hendrix.
The Hendrix pictures from the sound check, which start with Saturday Night of Otis Redding at the top. And then he put his camera away and comes back to sound check, and there's Jimi Hendrix behind a drum set. And Jim is standing face to face with this guy because it's not a show, it's sound check. Those photos are indelible.
One of my favorite shots of his that not many people even see was a shot of Nico, Judy Collins, Brian Jones on acid, and Dennis Hopper backstage at Monterey. And people don't even recognize Dennis Hopper in it. He's in the middle of the picture. He's out of his fucking mind. You know, it's funny. I had heard from friends of mine that work on Apocalypse Now, Dennis Hopper modeled his character in that movie after Jim. And it's probably how Dennis Hopper, being on acid at Monterey, remembers Jim.
Before he went on, Jimmy looked at me and goes, "You got a lot of film?" I go, "Yeah." You got motors? I go, "Yeah." I think maybe one or two of his roadies knew what he was gonna do. And he comes out at the last number, and he had a can of Roncinol lighter fluid. You can see it in the picture. And he's like, starts burning the guitar, man, and crashed it. Oh, Christ. It was amazing. No one had ever seen anything like that.
Music is about self-transformation. The best of music is about transforming an individual that's listening to it to a place that they had not been before. It's like reading a great poem, watching a performance of ballet. Music is transformative, and I believe that seeing is a creative act, and the best photographers allow us to believe that we see the world differently, that we see the world differently than our brothers and our sisters, from our parents and from our children, and that seeing is a creative act. And that when the two things come together, with great music and great performance and great photography, hey, it's art.
Jim didn't just photograph the event that was going on. He would keep his camera rolling, and he would just then shoot everything else that was going on around that as well. So something as meaningless as a peace sign, you know, on the concrete of a sidewalk, Jim saw it and he photographed it.
The peace symbol and its history is a really beautiful story, and the fact that Jim made a kind of study, one, it was in his face, okay? But two, he realized it was larger than that moment.
He really documented how this symbol changed over the 60s and became something to many different people. Not only was it anti-nuclear arms, it also meant freedom of speech. It also meant anti-war. It meant racial equality. It took on so many different meanings. And there was Jim Marshall documenting all of it. And I think that was his way of communicating with the world.
LSD, electric rock, social protest, anti-war movement boils up into this massive brew that's going to change the rest of the nation.
The news tonight, despite an official denial, is of a significant escalation of the war in Vietnam.
Down in the basement, mixing up the medicine. I'm on a
government. The man in a trench coat, badge out laid off, says he's got a bad call, wants to get it paid off. Look out, kid, it's something you did. God knows when, but you're doing it again. You better duck down the alleyway, looking for a new friend. The man in a coonskin cap and a pig pen wants $11 bills. You only got 10. Maggie comes Fleetfoot, face full of black soot, talking at the heat, put plants in the bed, but the phone's
Looting,
tapped anyway.
murder, and arson have nothing to do with civil rights.
Look out, kid, don't matter what you did, but walk on your tiptoes, don't tie no bows, better stay away from those that carry around a fire hose. Keep a clean nose, wash your plain clothes, you don't need a weatherman to know.
I say violence is necessary. Violence is a part of America's culture. It is as American as cherry pie.
Get well, hang around and get well, hang well, hot mail of anything is gonna sell. Try hard, get fought, get back, ride rail, get jail, jump bail, join the army if you
They are trying to teach us political power grows out of the barrel of a gun.
Six-time users hanging around the theaters, girl by the whirlpools looking for a new fool.
His is a personality not split but fractured. The kind of man who, on first meeting, will more often repel than attract. He is ruthlessly, often offensively blunt, talented, profane, compulsive, violent, sentimental, capable of great love and great hate.
I first met Jim it was May 18th, 1968, and I saw that there was going to be this pop rock festival, and everybody was going to be there. And I showed up at the gig. There was this guy in this corduroy coat, and he had a hat on, and pretty aggressive, giving people shit. And some fraternity guy had pissed him off. So this guy pulls a knife on him, and the security guy all shits his pants. And I said, hey man, is that knife real? And Jim turns to me and puts the knife up under my throat. And he goes, yeah, motherfucker, it's real, and then reaches back into his waistband and pulls out a gun and said, and so's this. Hey man, who brings a gun and knife to a rock concert? He said, I do. And I said, who are you? He said, I'm Jim Marshall, motherfucker. Who the fuck are you?
He handled a lot of guns, and guns were a big part of his persona. And you thought sometimes this guy could actually use one.
Violence, in fact, has followed him closely throughout his life, hugging his shoulder as tightly as a camera strap. He keeps charging at me with this knife, and I'm screaming at him to keep away. He wouldn't, and I shot him. And now he's only got one kidney. Mr. Macho. Okay, I was foolish and stupid to have a gun with me in an irrational situation, but he was a hell of a lot more stupid than I was. So Jim, you know, he definitely had malleable ethics around people. But what he didn't have malleable ethics around was photography.
Johnny Cash was another really lifelong great friend of Jim Marshall's. They were so much alike, it was crazy.
My father, in some ways, had a gruff, abrasive exterior, but had a great big warm heart underneath it. Jim Marshall was exactly the same way.
In 1968, when Johnny Cash wanted to do a live recording at Folsom State Prison, he said, I want Jim Marshall to be my photographer.
Turns out there were two one-day shows that had paid rent a few months. The album at Folsom Prison, and then I did San Quentin a year later.
My father knew hardship. When he went to prisons, he saw the conditions there that the men were living in. He knew also that many at the time, and still today, of course, pay far beyond their due.
Who have you got there? I've got Johnny with me. All right, come on in.
There are times in my life when I thought, you know, I wish that there was a video. The day that my father recorded live at Folsom, what happened was captured as true as could be in any format by Jim Marshall. The photographs that he took defined the experience. It's all there. You can see it in my father's eyes, my mother's eyes. And you know the experience if you know the album. It's a unique connection with that moment in that time. I'm grateful there isn't a film because I believe he captured it better.
Next year was 1969, which was San Quentin, and he had all access and he photographed one of the most iconic images ever, and that's the finger shot.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
At San Quentin, doing sound check, I said, Johnny, let's do a shot for the warden. And he goes, yeah. It's become one of the most ripped off pictures.
When I look at the famous picture of my father with his middle finger raised, I feel the energy of the moment. I feel my father's sense of defiance. You know, he'd written the song San Quentin the day before on an airplane as he descended into the Bay Area. The energy that was there, the laughter, the humor that was there, I feel that. I also see my grandmother Maybelle in the background. And so what an interesting connection that my two family members, my grandmother and my father, both in the Country Music Hall of Fame, are in one of the most famous rebellious photographs ever taken.
You better not bend over there on that camera like that. Man, you're in the wrong place to bend over, don't you know it? Get up from there on that camera.
Jim was the music photographer. Jim wasn't a politician's photographer. He wasn't a nature photographer. He was a musician's photographer. He captured music, and to capture that visually and to connect in the heart is a magical thing. Growing up around my parents, there was always laughter. There was always a good time. The kinship that my parents had with the ones that they loved never faltered. There were people they always held dear, and Jim Marshall was one of those people.
An only child born in Chicago, his family moved to San Francisco before he was 1 year old. He remembers his father as a handsome man, frustrated, abusive, a bit of a womanizer, and a drunk.
I remember one night trying to find out more about his life as a kid, and asked him how he felt his dad not being there contributed to his rage sometimes. And he said, what are you, fucking psychiatrist? Fuck, how the fuck do I know? You know, and I thought, okay, yeah.
No matter what it was never enough. You know, he had that hole in him that just seemed to be unfillable, you know. My father was a brilliant man, knew 13 languages and had to paint houses. So he drank a lot. My parents divorced when I was 10. My mom slaved in the laundry to bring me up. When I was 15, my father died. I didn't even know about it until my aunt came and told me. All I said was, good. I really only have 2 clear memories of him. One time I got up and he made me pancakes as big as a frying pan. Another time I got up from the table without permission and he slammed my head against the side of the table, knocked 2 teeth out. In the time it takes to tell the story, Marshall's features move from joy into rage. Some years ago, with the help of Rebecca, he was able to finally visit his father's Colma gravesite. He sat for a few hours, talking and crying, and made peace.
all children of the 1960s, orphans of America, children of blood. People say to us, you don't like it here, why don't you leave? We say, we left. We're already gone, motherfucker.
Do you have to reshoot?
No, I mean, sometimes you can't.
What happens?
Let's not go into that. It's too painful to think about.
Jim, what did you need the dog shot for? The Janice dog, do we need to make one of those? No. Okay. I don't think he realized what an influence and a personality and a friend he was to people. And it's a shame because that's why he felt so alone and he didn't really need to, because there were a lot of people who cared about him. But when he was doing his cocaine and just crazy, he would lock the inside door. So I knew when that lock was on, it was, I'm on a bender, don't come in, just go home, call you when I'm done. God bless him. He started writing notes that he would tape to the outside of the door. And he didn't write the notes before he was fucked up. He wrote them after, because in the back of his mind he was like, uh-oh, I better write a note to Davis. No work today. I'll pay tomorrow. Come at 11. Come at noon. This is the best one. He obviously had just done a line of coke or cut it, and it says NDW, Biz Today. So every time he went on a binge, his shirt would be filled with blood, there was cocaine all over the place, there was trash everywhere, it was crazy. For whatever reason, I stayed and I would clean up his mess and I would always come back. And I think Jim realized that I was really the only person that would come back. And it comforted him, I think, to know that somebody loved him enough to stay.
I think that Jim was lonely. I think that he could be so irascible and so challenging that I think, a lot of people didn't understand him. And I think that when he found people who did, he kind of grabbed hold tightly.
What was she like?
A very human person, very real, very vulnerable. One night in North Carolina, I was on the road with Baez and David, and Janice was giving a concert, and she said, hey, look at this, man. She said, I just made it with 20,000 people out there, and I'm going home alone. Now, she wasn't hitting on me, man. It wasn't that kind of relationship, I gave her a ride to the motel, because she was a friend, and she went home alone. On these two photographs, man, at one point, a lot of people didn't like the vertical shot. They said, man, that makes your legs look fat and depressing. And Janice said, hey, man, that's part of it. That's part of backstage, and I like it because it's real. Someone came in and said something, and she got out of her little slump, and she was the joyous, bubbly Janice that most people saw. She was a very special lady, What if there's a situation where people gather for one time and one time only and they're never together in that situation again? I can't recreate that picture. I guard my pictures of Coltrane like they were gold themselves, not just for the money, but because John was close to me and I can never photograph him again. And I've been called a real martinet about the controls of my work, and especially on people that have passed away. Well, hell yes. Someone trusted me with the privacy of their life to come into their lives with a camera. I can't violate that trust, and I won't. I will not do it.
When he found out that Dwayne had died in the motorcycle wreck, he walked the city for I think he said 12 hours. It was very troubling to him, you know. And I think he would feel very just isolated.
Of all the people that I've met in the music business, I love Dwayne Allman the most. I like to think of him as a brother. You know, I mean, I love him, man. And when Dwayne died, a part of me went with him.
Once he held my hand and he pulled me across the table and he said, your daddy loved cocaine, you know, which was like the funniest thing. And no one was telling me the truth like that. And, you know, and he told me his own struggles with drugs. He had no artifice at all. And he didn't like artifice in other people. And in some ways, I think that that's really what his connection with my father was.
His photos have the feeling that nobody else is in the room but the subject. There's a picture of Dwayne Allman playing in a hotel bathroom. I just can't believe there was another person there. Not even Jim. There's such a private, intimate, extraordinarily deep life image. These are real people boiled down to the nut.
Well, I did them in the same ring, on the horizontal on the ropes. I did the same ring a year before. It was Newman's gym down on Leavenworth Street. He used to work out, and he was very good. I mean, he boxed. One guy said, "Don't hit me in the mouth, man, I gotta play tonight."
There's an expression on his face you don't see in any other Miles Davis photograph. His face is soft and open, and that is what I find so striking about his photography.
Miles Davis pictures may be my favorite. That's such an outstanding picture.
I mean, I was up doing the streets of San Francisco from 1970 to 74. He wasn't a set photographer, but he came in on several occasions for what we call special shoots. So it was probably professionally the first time I met him. The contradiction with Jim is he was always trying to make you, as relaxed as possible. Let's just hang out and all that. But meanwhile, he was the most uptight, strung-out guy you'd ever seen in your life, you know? His fingers were chewed down to the bone. He's just raw. He was always picking on his fingers. And no, just relax. Just relax. I said, okay, I'll try, Jim, I'll try. But he was a very social cat, so if you kind of hit it off, he liked to socialize. It was a wonderful, free, liberal town. It was a great time, man. I didn't know a lot of people up there, and he was a great guy to pal around with.
Jim would be gone for a while, then he'd be home. And at that point in time, from late 60s through really 73, 74, Jim was gone a lot. He was always working. I mean, he was probably one of the most, if not the most, in-demand photographers. Jim was the man.
There was about 50 people that submitted portfolios to Life magazine to do the Stones tour for Life. I got it, based on 10 pictures. And then I had the cover of Life. It was great.
That's amazing. And it's not some puff piece, let's stretch it. No, this is like serious. This is serious work. Serious stuff where you look at the proof sheets and you go, oh, fuck. Okay.
When the Stones come back on their 1972 tour, they played 4 shows at a 5,400-seat venue called Winterland that Bill Graham ran. To be in that close proximity of that band at that point in their career, it was just an explosive performance.
When I see something developing before me, I instinctively, I think, this just comes from experience, man, and shooting a long time, I instinctively pick up the body that I feel at that given moment
is going to give me the framing and the image that I want. In other words, I got a 50 and a 35 around my neck. I got a 28 or a 21 and a 90 or an 85 around one shoulder and a 180 on another.
How did that motherfucker get that shot? You know? I mean, the whole idea of being close, being inside the photograph, that was a characteristic of Jim Marshall's that you don't see, I don't see, with a lot of other photographers. They'll put a long lens on, so that compresses everything. But Jim would get close and do it with a 28. Get close and do it with a 35. That 28, it's like as if you've stepped into the frame. His attention to detail, his exposure, his focus, he didn't miss. I mean, look, that was the thing that I was always interested in. Why am I a photographer? I wanted some youngster to walk around the corner in an exhibition and get hit in the face with a huge print and say, who are those guys? And that's what Marshall's work did.
What was it like being around the Stones, the bad boys of rock?
I probably did more coke than they did. The 72 tour was fueled by cocaine. There was a lot of it. It was a good tour.
And you know, at the time, I don't want to say all of us indulged, but to Jim, to me, to a couple of people, this was a participatory sport. If you're with whoever you were shooting, it was very much like being in a Stanislavski movie where you become what you're shooting. And it meant doing the drugs, drinking the drinks, and it wasn't to emulate them, it's because that's who we were. And you know what? We were curious.
This cocaine tour. Fueled by cocaine, a lot of it. I was doing a half ounce a week. That's 14 grams a week, 14 grams a week, almost 2 grams a day.
I think as his career went on and as his drug habit got more serious, that an anger evolved more strongly and he felt more restricted, and he fought against that.
I'm tired of shooting concerts and live stuff. I'm really fucking bored to death with it. Most places, the light is so bad that it's really frustrating to try to shoot when you don't have access to all angles. It's really awful.
What has happened is rock and roll got bigger as all of a sudden everybody said, ooh, I don't want you that close, I'm sweating. My manager wants me to have a good photograph. And the whole thing got much more restricted and controlled. Drove him nuts.
I mean, fuck all the words, man. Let's look at it. Look at my work. Look at my track record over 18 to 20 years of taking pictures. You could dislike me or like me. I don't give a shit. Look at my body of work over the last 20 years. You think it works?
1977, when Day on the Green were the biggest things ever, they'd have 60,000 people. Fleetwood Mac, Peter Frampton are headlining Day on the Green. As the show's going on, right behind the drum kit, he has a table set up.
They'd have a little table with the tablecloth and champagne, and they were drinking, you know, as if to say, we made it. Jim and Mike would be everywhere. You know, they'd be down in the pit, they'd be over on the left, behind me, whatever.
I start shooting. Well, Jim's shooting that day too, and Jim's doing lines. I guess Jim and D'Anthony at some point, somewhere, something hadn't gone right. Now Bill sees how upset they are. So he says, tell Jim to get out of here. I told him once, he's off. So Barsotti pulls Jim by the arm, says, hey, you've got to quit shooting, you've got to leave the stage. So as Jim's walking away, he says, hey, Anthony, I'm not afraid of you. You know, I've got a fucking gun too. And I thought, oh shit. That was the last time Jim ever shot on Bill's stage.
It's not fun anymore. I think that the people that run it, most of them, and this isn't just the concert promoters, I feel it, the PR people, the record company people, managers. In the beginning, I think it was more for music. It was fun. It wasn't just fun. I mean, let's face it, it was a business, but it was fun. And I think the bottom line now, the bloody thing is being run by accountants and businessmen.
Let's go, folks. Let's go. Whoa.
You know, Kevin Mazur, who does a lot of it, when he shoots for the Stones, they own everything. Everything's become corporatized. And corporate not only wants to own all the images, but they also want to control the message. That really hit about 1975, 76, 77. And at that point, Jim was done. He would not put up with that. And he found out, you know, in the end, they don't give a fuck who you are. If you're in sports, if you're Georgie Best, if you're Joe Montana, at a certain point, it doesn't matter. You go down, they drag you off, bring in the next one.
December 1st, 1981. Just another winter day. He arises and makes a cup of Celebi's Colossi for Rebecca, his wife of 8 years. A successful bank executive, she prepares for yet another business trip. She mentions needing a lift back from the airport around 7 that night. Quote, "I still can't believe how smooth she was," he says, shaking his dark head slowly. "I was watching the news and she hadn't called yet. It was a little after 7, and I remember thinking the plane must have been late. Just then the phone rang and I thought it was her. I answered, 'Hello, darling, I missed you.' And it was Western Union. There was a note in the left-hand dresser drawer. Rebecca had run away, taking close to 20 grand with her."
Jimmy told me a story about how he had put her in a closet and nailed the door shut so she couldn't get out. He was so angry. And I'm not quite sure how she did get out, but I think it was shortly thereafter that she left and left permanently.
He was not to hear from her or know if she was alive for more than a year. Eventually, papers notifying him their marriage had been dissolved arrived from Minneapolis. I thought I was going to go crazy. I loved that girl so much. She took a piece of me with her. She helped me, and I wasn't there when she needed me. I was inconsiderate and stupid. I used drugs, I was an asshole, and I fucked her life up and mine. The words tumble out one upon the next in an attempt to purge himself of the hurt. After Rebecca left, he began to slide deeper and deeper into a prison of despair, self-pity, and self-indulgence. And of course, I learned in media ethics class that you're not supposed to sleep with you're not supposed to do this, Jim. And he's like, no, it's fine, don't worry. We had figured out which photos to use, what was going to be the cover. I mean, it was getting pretty close. And then Jim pulls the Jim card. He wanted me to do something. He wanted me to go somewhere. And he's like, you know what? You better do this or I'm not going to let you use those photos. And he mistimed it. I just told him I got very Sicilian, and I was just like, you and the fucking horse you rode in on, no way. And I'm not publishing that article ever, no matter how much you beg me. And he begged me his whole life. It's more than 25 years since the first meeting and that first critical lesson. But there were many, many more. Listen to your instincts. Be true to yourself. Don't bullshit. Keep it simple. Know your equipment. Respect your subjects' trust. Get closer. Protect your work. No matter what.
If you talk about Jim Marshall, you've got to talk about copyright. People talk about Jim and his guns. I think he'd have shot a couple of people if he had the chance, as far as just being stupid about protecting their copyright, or rather not protecting their copyright. One of the things that he and I talked about was the fact that actually the whole copyright system needs to be revised because it's woefully inadequate. A lot of stuff has fallen into public domain that shouldn't have. Because what's happening is now they are targeting the photographers. They're targeting their copyright to check out the validity of it. And that is troubling. You know, and Marshall, he got paid, you know, and in his later years, you know, he stopped running after them young bands. But his work then protected him.
I could go make a very comfortable living, never having to pick up a camera again, just on my files. Because I never did a buyout. I've never done work for hire. I own everything I shot. So, you know, I've been good to my pictures. Now they're being good to me.
I took a continuing education of the bar class about copyright infringement, and he was one of the speakers. And he was very emotional about it. But what he was talking about is the sanctity of a person's work and how it cannot be stolen from him.
And I called the FBI in on the bootlegger trip because they were selling bootleg Johnny Cash Bob Dylan album with my picture on it. Someone bought the album for me. I wanted to double check. I called Rather Ripped and said, I'd like to find out where you got it. They told me to f*** off. We don't have to tell you. And I said, you're telling that to the wrong person. I called the FBI, went down and made a formal report. And Rather Ripped got busted. They're gonna be smartasses. They with me, I went after them legally. And I'll do it again to anybody at any time, anywhere that uses my pictures without my permission.
Most of the people out there, if you weren't paying attention, would rip you off. And I remember the first time he was telling me that, I was going, really? He goes, hey motherfucker, they rip off the musicians. Why the fuck wouldn't they rip us off? He said, you know, we're at the bottom of the fucking rung. We're nothing to them. He said, you can't take any shit from them. This is why I've got a fucking gun.
I don't have any guns now, huh? I'm not supposed to have any. I don't have any guns. What's a gun? I used to have guns.
Did you get in trouble with guns before?
I have been in trouble with guns before, yes. But that is not for print. Because you will be in trouble with guns if you print it.
And it happened in 1983. Rebecca had been gone more than a year without word. Marshall holed up in their huge Union Street apartment. On a March evening before St. Patrick's Day, the building's silent alarm was tripped. He went out with a .45 automatic, cocked, locked, and ready to go. Descending the stairs, he came upon two more neighbors. They phoned the police, charging that Marshall at one point crouched in a shooting stance and told them he would blow their brains out. Police confiscated a small arsenal from Marshall's apartment, shotgun, rifle, 14 handguns, and dozens of rounds of various types of ammunition.
The gun charge was a little bit of an issue, but Ray talked his boss, Mike Hennessy, into sitting down with Jim. Jim came in, and Mike kind of looked at him and thought, this guy's gonna get beaten to pieces in jail. He's going to annoy everybody. So Jim was sentenced to 1 year in work furlough. But by every account, he was a complete pain in the neck. He was always trying to co-opt the deputies by offering them signed photographs of their favorite rock musicians. People had to be reminded over and over again, accept nothing. He made it. He finished his year. Hennessy had told him, you cannot violate a single rule or I'm putting you in jail. And he was forever grateful.
His mother is still alive, but Marshall doesn't speak with her anymore. I have more than 80 first and second cousins, aunts, and uncles in the Bay Area. When I got arrested, not one member of my own family came to help me or even called. Not even my mother. I know I only have one mother, and it might haunt me the rest of my life. It's something I have to resolve in my mind. I haven't yet.
You know, there was a long period of time Jim really didn't do any photographs. He really was just selling catalog and not shooting things at all. And I know that a lot of that was drugs, but I also think that it was also he was tired of having to be Jim Marshall. It was hard work because it was exacting. It was demanding, and the excellence had to be there.
You go from being this kind of superhero that's constantly doing the work, and there's drugs are everywhere and it's available and it's just one big party all the time, and then you're alone and you've got all this downtime, and there's just a huge period that is just blank. And I think that happened to a lot of them. It's not that he didn't have the talent, it's that he was lost in processing his own demons.
I was a young executive in the music business, and Jim showed up in my office and he sat down across the desk. And before he said a word, he pulled out just a gigantic knife and he slammed it on the table and he said, "You're never gonna fuck with me." I was both terrified and amused, I think, at the same time. And I just said, "Jim, why would you think I'd fuck with you?" And he explained that everybody's always fucked with him. Every label guy's always fucked with him. And I said, "Well, look, you give me the opportunity to prove to you that I'm not that label guy, and I'll try to do that." And that was the beginning of a relationship that lasted until the day he died.
I have a picture here that Jim, who lived up the street from my plumbing shop, I had just taken over from my dad and my uncle. So Jim came by one day with the camera. We were all standing there, it was after work. I can't even remember him shooting the picture. We're yakking, he goes, "Just in front of that truck." Me, my cousin, my brother, and two other brothers that worked for me. It was not in your face, it was not staged. He just presented me with this in 1982, 83. And he said, "Kenny, I want you to have this."
He was one of the most thoughtful people I think I've ever met. He was come to town and he called me and he said, "I want to make a picture of your family." And I said, "Jim, thank you. You really don't have to do that." "No, I'm doing it. Where do you live?" "I'll be there on Saturday. I'll be there Saturday at 10 o'clock. Sure enough, he showed up at 10 o'clock. And he marched us out to the park, and he captured us right outside of our apartment in Riverside Park. That, for me, is an absolute forever moment that I am so grateful for.
He didn't have a lot of friends. He didn't have a lot of work. People weren't calling him. So he had to really do what he could to survive. He photographed a lot for Fantasy Records, which was in Berkeley. So he did some of his one-hit wonders, Eye of the Tiger, Survivor, which is a total shock to anybody who knew Jim. And he started pulling himself out of the mess he had made. And I think he really wanted to redeem himself.
John McDermott, who shoots regularly for Time magazine, has known Marshall casually for about 7 years. He respects him as a photographer, but is brutally candid in his assessment of Jim Marshall, the man. The people who are close to him hope that this is the time he gets serious, straightens his act out, gets more in control of his life, uses his talents, gifts, and intelligence, and doesn't act so much on some of the baser instincts. What happened was a catharsis, he says, trying not to pick at his hands, a nervous habit he finds almost impossible to break. It washed the slate clean, and I feel ready to make a fresh start. There's still a lot of pictures I want to take, and what I do, I think I do as well as anybody. I've seen the mountain and been to the top. I was sliding down the last few years, but I can get to the top again, and I will. I want to see Jim take better care of himself. McDermott stresses because, to tell you the truth, it breaks my heart to see someone hurt themselves the way Jim has hurt himself. He needs to start loving himself more. He's got a lot of bridges to mend. He's got to eat a little bit of crow. He's got to start making friends for himself. I think it's fair to say this is Jim's last shot. I haven't read that. in a long while.
You know, I couldn't ask for a better life. I've been my own worst enemy. You know, I'm never going to be one to say they did it to me. Whatever I did myself. I'm very good at that.
The last time I saw him, he took me to lunch. And at that time, I think it was about a year before he died. And he looked very different to me. And he told me then that he had stopped using drugs, that Amelia had told him if he didn't stop, she was leaving him. And he could not let that happen. And I'm so glad that I got to see him that way, at least once.
It's really a shame Jim died when he did, because he was really starting to see that people loved his work. He was really starting to get recognized. And so he was just starting to really get that and see that. And then he died. I have an image of this very complex, incredible friend who was a photographer, but he was also my friend. He really was my friend.
He was another kind of cat. All right, I miss him.
I remember thinking that we'd lost one of the great characters who has ever been. And almost as quickly as I thought that, I thought, you know, and I don't know why this is, but we're not replacing them. And that just compounded the sadness for me. Jim pushed every boundary, and I think that that's where a lot of his genius and greatness occurred, was out there at the edges. And I just, you know, I think that that doesn't really exist as much anymore for lots and lots of reasons.
You know, the one thing I say to young photographers now is pay attention. You know, you gotta earn it. You gotta work for it. Jim earned it. Jim worked for it.
His pictures are immortal, and the beauty of what he did is it's obviously living way past his life, and as a true artist, be it a painter or a photographer, you have a clear legacy of that time. And his pictures stand out in terms of their subject matter, not necessarily about their lighting or composition. That was secondary to him. He loved passion, he loved feelings, he loved emotion, and his pictures are really a personification of the incredible depth of feeling that musicians had.
I left behind a body of work that I think is second to none. I think there's a lot of people who have done maybe better, but I think I captured the essence of each musician I photographed, tried to.
I can tell you this, that what I get pleasure out of thinking about what any individual artist has achieved and how I would rank their achievement is not based on one picture. It is based on a lifetime.
When asked if he knew at the time he recorded them how powerfully lasting his images would be, Jim laughs slightly and then pauses, as if looking at the last 2 decades and the hundreds of thousands of frames that have slid past his viewfinder. No, I didn't know they would be so lasting. I never realized how important those days were. I have been at some of the greatest events in musical history, and it's because of my cameras and the trust people had in what I did with them. I'm proud of that. I've been lucky and good.
Everything in life, it's bits and pieces. Even the most incredible love affair, it only burns white hot for a while. We probably didn't even realize it at the time, but we were going through an incredible period in our youth And the world has been fortunate that for people like Jim, he was able to hold up a mirror and at least on film document some of his experiences to share. And those experiences, I mean, the best stuff was the behind the scenes, the backstage. It's places most people never go, they only dream about going.
I climbed up the rafters about 100 feet in the air. I was on a little bit of acid, coke. I'm up there and I'm, whoa, looks cool with the red filter. And I'm so stoned I didn't know how to rewind them. I didn't even stay for the whole thing. I didn't see Jimmy. I didn't see Crosby, Stills and Nash. I'd been there for 4 days. Drugs didn't work anymore. Chemicals didn't work anymore. It was nuts.
Marshall has been at many great rock events. He recalls what it was like to be at yet another right place, Woodstock.
Nobody could have conceived that it would have been what it was. I mean, I had a motel 30 miles away. I never saw the room and it was paid for up front. I ended up, what little sleep I got was in a rented Ford that ended up smelling like a gymnasium when I was done with it. That was about 50 yards from the stage. I mean, the scope, the feeling, the camaraderie, everything about that place. The only bummer was that, who was that idiot? Was it Abby Hoffman or one of those morons that got up on the stage when the Who were on there and Peter Townsend knocked them off the stage? That was the only bummer at the whole festival.
It was rock and roll, man. It was rock and roll.
I think we're inundated with mediocre images constantly.
Yeah, we see so many pictures, and the bulk of the public thinks it's easy, that they're not worth very much. They forget that to take that picture took me years. I mean, I've expended half my life taking photographs. People don't seem to understand that. They think they can go out and buy a camera and take the same picture. Well, no, they can't. And you can take what you want out of that. Now turn that fucking thing on.